when I meet with a client, with a homeowner, for example, if I were to meet with a client about their wind damage claim, and let's say that they've already been approved for a branch roof. We love those, right? We know that they've already been approved, and they have in their possession like this secret little thing, this, State Farm estimate. We don't know how much it is. All we know is that State Farm approved the roof. We don't know how much they approved it for. We don't know how much stuff they missed in that estimate. But the client thinks, right, that they have to go and they've got a check for, say, $10,000 or whatever it is. They believe that they have to go and find a contractor to do the work for that $10,000 or less, right? But I just think that they need a little enlightening. They need some guidance. They really need somebody to help them with this and show them how everything works. They need an expert, okay? I believe that everyone that I do business with, right, I believe that they should have to qualify to do business with me. I want to encourage every one of you here to put that on yourself, okay? Like every one of these clients out there should have to qualify to do business with you, not the other way around, okay? So if they want to go and interview 2, 3 other contractors, by the way, I think that's beautiful. If they're really going to follow through with that and not hire me on the spot, even though they had that plan, then I think that's beautiful, because nobody else is going to do as thorough of a job as I am when I come out and see them, okay? And they're going to know that. They're going to see the difference right away. I believe that the only real way to win, if you take all that together, right, is to, number one, on your inspection, and by the way, like this, and so I think most of you are in sales here, not everybody, I understand, but if you're looking for a way to sell the job and get better sales, better closing percentages, right, I would submit to you, and so, pardon me, pause. You're looking for a better way to sell the job. You're looking for a better way to get approvals with insurance companies, so you have less resistance, less friction. Because, you do all the work to get it sold and then can't get it approved, that's so frustrating, right? So you're looking for a better way to sell it, you're looking for a better way to get approvals, and get those approvals done at a higher amount, thus putting more money in your pocket, right? That is absolutely starting with the inspection, because that inspection can accomplish all of those things at the same time. It really can, and I think you'll understand that before we are done today. But let me explain. So like when I meet with a client, with a homeowner, for example, if I were to meet with a client about their wind damage claim, and let's say that they've already been approved for a branch roof. We love those, right? We know that they've already been approved, and they have in their possession like this secret little thing, this State Farm estimate. We don't know how much it is. All we know is that State Farm approved the roof. We don't know how much they approved it for. We don't know how much stuff they missed in that estimate. But the client thinks, right, that they have to go and they've got a check for, say, $10,000 or whatever it is. They believe that they have to go and find a contractor to do the work for that $10,000 or less, right? And a lot of times that or less part, we know that they're doing that. We're thinking that they're trying to find a contractor to do it for less and put the extra money in their pocket. And I see heads going over that. And they may be, okay? But I would submit to you that may be the case, not because they're greedy or scandalous or shady, but just because they're not familiar with this kind of a process. I think it's because they're a savvy business. There's a great likelihood, okay, because there are some of those, that they're just being a savvy consumer, just like you or I would, if we didn't know any better. Like if we know that we have to find somebody to fix something, so we could call up a few guys, we shop around. We try to get the best deal. If I have to get a new SD card for my camera, I want to get the best deal. I just don't want to go buy anything, right? And so it's almost like irresponsible to not be that way, to not scrutinize it, to not keep things in your to the vest, like that insurance paperwork. It's not because they're trying to get over on you. I think most of the time they're a good client. They just need you to educate them. They just need you to educate them and familiarize them with the process. But I just think that they need a little enlightening. They need some guidance. They really need somebody to help them with this and show them how everything works. They need an expert, okay? So at the inspection, they have that paperwork, but I would never, ever, ever ask them for that paperwork. So I know a lot of people where, maybe some of you are like this, I'm not knocking you, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna come out and see you, but send me over that paperwork. And then you kind of wait until you get the paperwork before you even go out. I understand, because your time is so precious and you don't want to waste time with the wrong client. I actually respect that because of the reason why you're doing it. Because I do think that you should stop going to places where you shouldn't be going, to people who are not qualified. Like if you're, I think a lot of you, if you get a call from a referral or whatever it is, and they call up and they say, hey, I want you to come look at my roof, and you're like, okay, what's your name, number, address? I could be there at 2:15. Does that work for you? You're just looking for something to write with in the truck or whatever, and you jot it down and you head on out there. But you don't know anything else about the claim. Maybe they told you on the phone, yeah, I got a roof, or State Farm said I need a roof, or what. Maybe they gave you some of that info, but I don't think you're really being an investigator, when they're calling. And me, I want to investigate that before I waste any of my time. My time these days is precious. And there's no way that I'm about to, like, I have people all the time, they hit me up and they're like, hey man, give me a call. Okay, what you need? You know what I mean? Like, they're like, hey, I got a question. Okay, I get like 20 of those a day. Like, I don't have time to even respond to those. So like, I want to know a little bit, I want to have a little bit of context with that, right? So I think that instead of just running out there and thinking, well, it doesn't really matter what they tell me because I don't want to scare them off. I don't want to tell them about the insurance stuff and scare them off. But it doesn't matter what they tell me because I can just go out there and kind of see where things go, see where it leads to, right? That works for a lot of people, but not for me. Not for me. I want to make sure that the client I'm going to see is the right client. Okay. So just a couple things. I would ask them 5 questions, just 5 basic questions. On top of that, what's your name, address, and all that kind of stuff. Like, let's say it comes in as a lead, and you have to contact them, and you have, that basic info. And the client usually says what the problem is during that inquiry, right? Maybe it's a web inquiry or something. I don't know how you guys get all that stuff, but it comes in, it's got the name, address, and missing shingles, or roof, or water spots on it. There might be some information that comes out that the client offers up, but I would just add to all that, very simple little basic questions. It's not going to scare anybody, okay? Okay, and have you already notified the insurance company about that? That's real simple, all right? I don't say, have you already filed a claim? I just say, okay, and have you already notified the insurance company about that? Okay, great. And number 2, I'd say, and have they already sent someone out? I didn't say, did an adjuster, I said, and have they already sent someone out? Okay, great, right? And what'd they say? So I didn't ask them, did you get your claim approved? Or how much money did you get? I didn't say any of that. I just said, and what'd they say? Well, so if I asked them, have you already notified the insurance company? Yeah, we filed a claim, or no, we haven't. So you know where they stand on that, right? If they already filed a claim, that gives you context, but if they haven't, they may need your help with that part of it, right? Then maybe they're not going to file a claim. Maybe they don't know if they should file a claim. Maybe they're looking for you to see if they have damage, right? So, all right, have you already notified the insurance company, right? And have they already sent someone out? Yeah, they came out last Tuesday. Or no, they're coming out next Tuesday. That tells you something too. We got to get out there right now, because if the adjuster hasn't been there yet, let's go out there and lock them down so that we can be out there with the adjuster, right? Okay, and what did they say? Well, they said I need a new roof. Or they said they're not paying for it. Or they said, that they're going to pay for a couple missing shingles, right? Gives you some context about what they said. You don't need to say, well, what did the insurance paperwork say? Or did you get the insurance paperwork? Or send me the insurance paperwork. You don't need to say that, right? Have you already notified the insurance company? Have they already sent someone out? And what they say? Well, they said I need a new roof. If they said I need a new roof or missing shingle, that tells you I know they have an estimate in their possession. I don't know how much it is, but if they have an estimate in their possession, they also have a check. I don't know how much any of that is, but I know that, right? Especially from the next question, which is, and who is your insurance company? If they say State Farm, and they said all the rest, I know how State Farm operates. So that tells me they have a check. Or it tells me they're coming Tuesday. It gives me a lot more reference. And then the fifth question, which is a little bit unrelated, but equally as important, I believe, which is, okay, great, and when are you looking to get the project completed? Right? And they're like, well, no, I'm just getting ideas for now. Okay, great. Can you give me a number? I'm not looking to give them ideas. I'm just not looking to give them ideas. That's just me. Maybe you guys are, but I don't have time to give them ideas. I don't think it's a remodeling company, right? Where we go out there and sketch up ideas for them. I'm not there to give them ideas. They're like, well, I'm not going to do it this year, I'm going to do it next year. Okay, great, call me next year. You know what I mean? I don't have time for that. I really don't. So I think, just if we ask that question, think how much time we can save, by going to places where they're like, or then after I'm this is my pre-qualification process, right? After I'm pre-qualifying then the next part is, I want them to have a basic, I don't want to give them the whole background of everything. I don't want to educate them fully on the phone. But I do want to give them a brief summary of what it is that I do and how I can help them and how that process is going to look, okay? Because here's the thing. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, whoever it is called, I know that you probably called me because you need me to come out and give you a price, right? And that's, everybody is like, yeah, that's why I call. In fact, some of them will even say, I'm only going to let you come out if you give me a price. I mean, I've had so many people coming out, knocking on my door, and all they want to do is get my insurance paperwork. And they think, and a lot of times it's true, they think that this is what they're afraid of. They don't want to give you the paperwork because they're afraid if they do, then you're just going to craft your price to match that paperwork. That's how a lot of contractors do it. They just take, that to me is a flawed business model, because that means you're just taking the adjuster's word for it. You're just going to take whatever the adjuster decided to put on the paperwork, and that's good enough for you, and you're going to do the job for that amount. That's also a flawed reasoning behind the way, or a flawed method of looking for the contractor, like what they're doing. Like I said, they're misguided, right? And so I want to make sure that they understand that I can give them a price now on the phone before I ever even put my hand on my tape measure. And I tell them that. I'm going to give you a price right now on the phone, Mr. Jones, before I ever even come out there and put my hand on my tape measure. And they're like, who's this quack, right? I like to kind of keep a straight face when I say that too. Like, I'm not joking. Like, I can give you a price right now without ever putting my hand on my tape measure. Allow me to explain. My price is the total approved insurance amount. That's my price. Let me elaborate on that though, okay? I have to clarify a few things. Is that I mostly work on insurance projects. And so my experience is with just about all the insurance companies. I've looked at a lot of insurance estimates. I've done a lot of insurance jobs, okay? And I'm here to tell you that all, not some, not most, not a good percentage of, but all of the estimates that I've ever looked at in my career are missing items from the insurance company. I'm not trying to say that they're, just trying to get you. I'm not trying to say that that's their motive. Like, that's not what I'm saying. So, whatever the reason is, items are missing from those estimates. And most of the time it's because the adjusters just missed items. Like, they came out, they did their inspection, and they didn't see certain items that are damaged that need to also be in that estimate. So I understand that you're probably, Mr. Jones, you called me because you need a price. You're looking for someone that can get the job done for what they've already paid you. I'm not going to ask you what they've already paid you. I don't need to know that information. That's none of my concern. Okay, I can tell you that I use a software program called Xactimate, which is exactly what State Farm, your insurance company, uses. And then I like to explain that to the client. Not too complex. I don't want to go into a university education with the client on the phone. I don't want to be there for hours because you don't want to overdo it. You do want to keep it brief because you want to leave that for your presentation when you come, right? But I don't want to, teach them everything on the phone. But I need them to understand as quickly as possible how things work. So your insurance company, State Farm, uses a software program, a pricing software program called Xactimate. Xactimate? It's called, they're going to forget that name. So it's not important that you tell them all about the company, Xactware and Xactimate. But there's a company called Xactimate that they research all the data in every market. So without going too far into that, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, Xactimate for this market, and forgive me guys, but what is this market? Do you know what it is on Xactimate for this market? Is it Hartford, or what was it? Hartford on the price list, right? And that's different from...
Well, there's 3...
What's another one in Connecticut? Another price list.
County, Hartford County, New London County, and New Haven County.
New Haven. So New Haven would be another price list, right? Okay, so for example, here, like, wherever we're at, when you're talking to the client, I'm just giving you a way to explain to them very, very briefly. The price for 1 linear foot of baseboard here in Hartford, sorry, here in Hartford.
This would be Litchfield County.
Screw it. Here in Hartford is different than the price for 1 linear foot of baseboard in New Haven, for example. And that price changes every single month. And so Xactimate keeps track of all the different components of construction, the labor, the materials, just about anything you can think of, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. That's what it keeps track of. So the good news is that price for 1 linear foot of baseboard, the price that State Farm is using for your project, I'm using the exact same price. Okay, so you have to understand that we have the same price, me and your insurance company. That's the best news I can tell you. And I wish that would solve everything, okay? But what I found from my experience is that they always miss items. And if they miss line items from that estimate, it's going to equal short money. Like you're going to come up short and not have enough money. And so I just want to encourage you, if you go out there, and whether I come out and help you, to see you or not. See, I like to do another thing too. For the bouncing ball, is I believe that everyone that I do business with, right, I believe that they should have to qualify to do business with me. I want to encourage every one of you here to put that on yourself, okay? Like every one of these clients out there should have to qualify to do business with you, not the other way around. Okay, so if they want to go and interview 2-3 other contractors, by the way, I think that's beautiful. If they're really going to follow through with that and not hire me on the spot, like even though they had that plan, then I think that's beautiful because nobody else is going to do as thorough of a job as I am when I come out and see them. Okay, and they're going to know that. They're going to see the difference right away. A lot of the difference stuff can happen on the phone because remember that, hey, how you doing? Yeah, I'll be out there at 2:15. That's how everybody else is. That's how your competition is. So if you could spend a little more time on the phone with them, I encourage you not to withhold all of this proprietary information about the Xactimate, how things work. I don't want to give them that information, give them too much information, then they don't want to do it. If they know how much money I'm making, then it's worse, right? I don't believe any of that. I think just the opposite is true. I think if you're able to open up the hood and show them everything that goes into why the estimate comes up that way, and the inspection and everything else, and why that is, and how, then it shows that you have the knowledge and the capability to deal with it, to solve it. So in other words, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you're looking for someone to do the job for the price you already have. But what if State Farm's missing a whole handful of items? And what if, the person that you select doesn't even care about that, because again, they're just trying to do the job for the price you want, and nobody ever addresses all the missing items. And so, from my perspective, I believe that we need to make sure first that all those missing items are even in the estimate. So that's why my price is the total approved items that are approved by State Farm. That's my price. And so when I come out to see you, if I do come out, not if you'll have me, but if I decide to come, right? So, but if I do come out, then the reason why I want to come is to inspect the entire property, every inch of the property, every room, closet, and hallway of the property. Let me say that again, because you guys are like, look at me like, yeah, right. No, every room, closet, and hallway of the property. And when I come out, I want to inspect every inch of every elevation on the exterior. If there's a way for me to get into the attic, I want to get into the attic. I have a little drone. Some of you got, if you have drones, throw that in. I want to fly that. And get a real up close perspective of the whole property. Okay, so this way, when I do that, the reason why I'm doing that is I can see the items, if there are any, that were missed, and I can take photos of it. And Mr. and Ms. Jones, when I come, I'm going to take hundreds of photos. And whether you hire me or not, I'll give you those photos. That's another little bonus that I think people are usually interested in. Because if you do a good job of educating them, maybe you educate them and teach them, and they use the information that you taught them to try to go hire somebody to do it for less and then put money in the pot. Maybe they do that, okay? If they are going to do that, then they'd be better off if they had all your proof, right? All your pictures that you took, all your hundreds of pictures of all these items that were missed. So that's kind of my trade-off, right? It's like, number one, I'm never going to ever give them a copy of my Xactimate estimate unless they've signed it. So if they think they're getting that, they're not getting that. They can have the photos, but they're not getting my Xactimate estimate. I have a lot of times with people that, but are you going to, if you come out, are you going to give me an estimate? Nobody gives me an estimate. They just want my estimate. So if I have somebody like that and I make that, promise to them, I'm going to keep my promise. I may sit down and do the estimate. But I'll hand them my laptop and let them sit there with it for 4 hours if they want to. They're not getting a copy of that Xactimate estimate unless they've signed with me. That's key. So I don't know how you guys do it, but for me, I wouldn't give any of my expertise to them out with the adjuster. How do you guys do that? You go out and meet with the adjuster without being signed?
Well, we usually want to get a contingency signed before.
So you at least have that? Okay, good. Yeah, that's just, I was at a meeting last year, just right after yours or right before. It was in Baltimore. Had this mother-son there in the meeting, and they had a big business, commercial roofing company they had for generations, and they recently have been enlightened by the insurance stuff. They had this big $1 million insurance job, and they went and got it all approved, and the client hired somebody else to do it for $300K. And I was like, well, what happened? I'm trying to figure out what happened. And I said, wait a minute, did you have them signed? And they said, no. And I physically fell over on the floor in the meeting. I'm like,
that is the worst part, and it's happened to me, and it's happened to some of my salesmen, where you read the person in a way, you're like, what, I don't have to worry about this person. Yeah, I just, I don't want to ask them to sign. They seem like they're honest people.
It's hard to second guess
you drive by that house
yeah.
one day and you see the roof's already been done, and it's just like,
But if you did that, it was your
right, Neil?
You knew it was your judgment that you trusted, though. So
yeah, your judgment sucked.
Yeah.
Because some way of reality.
You have to make exceptions in this, to a lot of different rules. It has to have an exception, right? So, and long for a good reason. But So they have to know though, that when I come, I'm gonna get the proof. So number one, I'm gonna come to see if there are missing items, and if there are, I'm going to document it. Because what I found, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, with State Farm, they're actually a pretty decent company. I don't like to criticize their insurance company. That's not a good move, right? Think of it this way. If you got in trouble and needed to hire a lawyer, God forbid, but if you had to do that, and you had a certain judge on the docket, and you told the lawyer's like, well, you went to go see a lawyer, the lawyer's like, well, this is judge. And tell them, they're like, oh, Lord, that's bad news. That's a hating judge. You know what I mean? Like, to me, I'd be thinking, like, I don't know if I should hire this lawyer. Like, he's not very good at his job. He's already kind of thinks he lost before I got, So you don't want to be like, State Farm? Oh, no, I wouldn't do that. I'd be like, the State Farm, they're actually, we work with a lot of State Farm claims. And what I found is, and this is true, I wouldn't lie to them. I don't think it's a good idea to lie to any client. And the insurance company, it's illegal. So like if they ask me how I'm doing today, terrible. I don't even want to lie to them about that, So just try to make that a habit. But, with I forget where I was going with that now. Yeah, State Farm. So what I found with State Farm is that if you document the items that are missing and simply just show it to them and prove it to them, they're usually pretty willing to approve that, right? So I gotta let them know that's why I'm coming, is to document all those things, because that's the easy way to deal with that problem. Because like if you're trying to find another contractor to do the job for the same price that they gave you, what job is he gonna do? Is he gonna do all those missing items too? Right? So it's not apples to apples. It's totally apples to oranges on that. So for me, I believe that every single job site is like a crime scene that has to be investigated. Seriously. If you think about that, like CSI mode, right? Like every inch of the job has to be cleared by you. Like everything's got to be combed, like a fine-tooth comb, right? Because if it does, right, and then I document that evidence, it's going to be approved. Unless it's not, something outside of the policy, it's usually going to be approved. So if I go into it from the perspective that if this is my job, nobody ever is going to be more detailed than me about it. No one's going to know more about this job than me. Okay, so we'll take a break here in a few minutes, but I just want to kind of close out with that qualification stuff, right? So I just want them to understand, about the Xactimate, right? And when I come out, that I plan to inspect every room, closet, and hallway, every inch of everything on the exterior. Because if they know that I'm going to do that, there's a couple different things that gets accomplished from that. Like they know that when I come out, it's going to take a while, number one. So it's not going to be just like a 5-10 minute thing. They shouldn't set this thing up if it's like, well, I'll meet them after school, and before soccer for that little half-hour window that they have. Like, plan to take a little bit of time, right? And I should have just called a break right now. We'll take one here. Plan to take a little bit of time with that. Also, husband and wife team, like appointments, I believe are crucial. Like the spouse, having the spouse at the appointment, that's just fundamental 101 stuff right there. Because if you come out and you do your entire deal that I'm going to talk about, what I would encourage you to do, then if one party wasn't there and you have to turn around and explain that to the, like the wife has to then explain that to the husband. The wife could probably do it a lot better than the husband could explain to the wife. But my point is you're going to have to come back and do it again, right? Or the effect will have been lost. So I believe it's just so important to be there with both. Closing percentages, that's where I was always focused at. 90+%, which is where I think you probably should be if you're doing it right. If you've pre-qualified your client, meaning you're not going out there unless you're sitting in front of the right person. Like you've asked the right questions, those questions I went through before, and then give them a brief introduction about what you plan to do. You told them what your price is, so you told them how you go about coming to your price. What should happen on that phone call, and you can almost hear the light bulb going off, is once they know that you're coming out to investigate rather than to estimate, and your purpose of investigating is to find the missing items that State Farm missed, and because all estimates that I've ever seen are short, that means I'm basically telling them I don't need to look at their paperwork, because when I come out, I already know that it's short. I already know that State Farm is missing items from your estimate. So I don't need you to show me the paperwork. Instead, I'm going to come out and investigate and find all the items that should be there, right? And prove that those items exist, that they are damaged, and include them with the same pricing software that your insurance company uses. Does that make sense? So if you've explained that to them, something usually happens where they're like, okay, yeah, because I want you to look in here, and I want you to look at this, and I want you to look at that, right? Like they get it, and they want you to do that. They want you to do that to prove the missing items. Like they're excited about that. If you know that, if you hear that light bulb go off, then you know that they're already basically sold. You just got to go out there and show up. It's more about, I've never found that this was one of those things like back in the Cutco days, where you had to do this great job and close the deal. You know, you had to build the value and overcome the objections and close the deal. This is not that. It never has been. It never has, like for me, in all the 20 years I've been doing this, it has never, ever, ever been that way. It's not selling at all. More than anything, please remember, it is simply completing the steps. It's just completing the steps. Like you have to show up. You have to show up for the appointment. You have to complete the steps. If you do those things, you don't have to close or convince anybody to do anything. It should happen right on its own. And I think everything else pretty much happens on its own too. And so when I come out to an appointment with a client, the first thing that everybody I think wants to do when you show up is like to answer the door, and like if I have an appointment with an AC guy that comes out to see me at my house, and I know he's coming, and somebody rings the doorbell, I go and I answer the door. Hey, how you doing? I see that they're the AC guy. Okay, right this way, right? And I start taking them to the problem, and because they just want to accomplish the reason why you came. And so for me, first I want to slow all that down and build a little rapport first. It's a rule to any sales. Like, is try to make a friend. Try to find some common ground. Do it with genuine sincerity. So like, the best way to make a friend that I found is to ask them lots of questions about themselves. Because people like to talk about themselves more than anything else. I think probably myself included. You know, like we're all a little narcissistic. We like to talk about ourselves, our own lives, our own things that we're into. And so this is an opportunity where you can just let the client talk. It's a win for you to let them talk about themselves. The best way to get them talking about themselves is to ask them questions about themselves, but genuine sincerity. So if you see that their son plays soccer from a picture on the mantle or whatever, and you want to start asking about soccer and this and that, if you can't stand soccer, pick a different subject, because that's not going to be the common ground, you know. Or if it's maybe they have a monster car in the driveway, and that is something that, jump on that. Or maybe that isn't, stay away from it. You know, hey, nice car, move on to another thing. You know. But find something that you feel genuine interest in also, and ask them questions about that. If you can't find anything, a good place to start with, just a good icebreaker, because you're usually in someone's home, is how long have you lived here? That's something that you can usually start to, you know, where'd you come from? But just make it a priority to ask lots of questions to the client that don't have anything to do with the job. But if you do ask them how long you lived here, that could very well relate to the job, right? You kind of get an idea for how old the roof is and other things, right? Or maybe they did some some of the work in the house themselves, and maybe that kind of leads into that. But ask some questions. I think a good rule of thumb is 5 to 7 minutes. How do you do that when you show up and they're like, here, right this way? It's hard, so you kind of have to stop the momentum. And what I like to do, I know you guys have like a presentation booklet that you bring with you on the jobs. What do you bring with you? Nothing?
I like to come from within. I don't want to be like a mechanical step by
Like
step.
a
Right, recording.
traditional,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, okay, great. Well, I think it'd be good to have something, some kind of an outline, right? And I'll explain what I mean. I brought with me today, like, so when they go try to grab you and take you this way, well, I'm gonna go look at all of that, and as I told you on the phone, by the way, on the phone, another accomplishment of telling them, or another reason behind telling them that you intend to inspect every room, closet, and hallway, is they know that you're planning to come inside, okay? So at my house, I've been married almost 20 years, if someone came unannounced and said they wanted to come and inspect every room, closet, and hallway in our house, it's not happening. Like, it's just not happening. And maybe for a lot of people, it's the husband that's the reason why it's not happening. But for me, it's my wife. Like, she just wants to make sure things are picked up. She'll be pissed if somebody comes over and says, I'm gonna inspect every room, closet, hallway, you know? So if they know on the phone that you're intending to do that, then they can make arrangements and they can feel comfortable about that. And they know that that's gonna take some time. So they plan for it in that way, right? So, okay, back in the door, they're trying to drag you off. You say, okay, yeah, I wanna look at all that. And we'll start with the inside if that's okay. And have a purpose for that too, is because where do most people sign their deals?
Kitchen table.
What's that?
Kitchen table.
Kitchen table, right? Sometimes it's a living room and other places, but usually it's the kitchen table, right?
Yep.
I want to go there now. My first time going there, I want to go right to the kitchen table. That's where I want to go first, okay? Because if I've gone to the kitchen table first, it's easy to get back to again for the clothes. We've already done this before. Let's go back to where we're familiar at, right? So I want to go to that kitchen table first instead of going on my inspection and doing all that. So I want to sit down for a minute and talk to the client, okay? And that's why I think it's good to have an outline of some sort. I can help you with that, because I agree with you. I agree. I even say, for the people that do have the presentation stuff, is like the bells and whistles page where you have all the master certified, you know, all the top, the 2020 top perform, all that good stuff, right? It's like, okay, here's our bells and whistles page, I like to say. This is the page that shows all of our accomplishments and all. We're wonderful, okay? But I'm not going to go through all that and try to sell you anything, you know. I just want to give it to you, but that's what this is. But it's something kind of an overview, and I always tell people, don't make it like a ritualistic type thing where you have to do different things. It's like, people know that's coming at them. They know you're like reading from a script, right? You know? I don't like scripts either, so I don't think that the script is where you want to go. But I do think something visual helps you to get your accomplishment, just to kind of give them, my purpose is to, and I tell them, I want to give you a roadmap of everything that we're going to do, so you know exactly what I intend to do and when I'm going to do it, so you know what to expect, okay? So it's usually a 3-step process where I want to come out and do my inspection with them, okay? And then I go and I prepare all of my contract paperwork and everything, and then I sit down with them and present it to them. It's like step 1, step 2, step 3. If all that can happen in the same day, same meeting, fantastic. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you have to go and, you know, come back because it took so long through the inspection. But I want to let them know that that's what I intend to do. Okay, my step 1 process is to sit down, give you a little bit of an explanation about what I'm doing, my process, and then do the inspection. We'll walk through together I'll walk through together with you through the house, and then I'll go and take my photos and things. I'll probably go through the attic. I'll fly my drone. That'll be my homework assignment. Your homework assignment at the time is, here's my references, here's my BBB stuff, here's my insurance. Check that out. That's your homework assignment, right? And while I'm doing all my stuff, that's my homework assignment, that's your homework assignment. When we're all done with that, assuming I find damage and everything, and I'm gonna put it all together on my paperwork, and I'm gonna come and I'm gonna present it to you. And then I like to actually give them a copy of that paperwork, like the contract paperwork. I think it's a good idea to show them the blank copy of it, to show them what to expect. And for me, the way that, I don't know how your contract paperwork, but my price actually says total approved replacement, insurance replacement cost value. So that there isn't going to be a big reveal in any price. There never is going to be some price that I'm going to come up with and show you on this paperwork. You know the price now. Total RCV, that's the price. So before we do anything, there's not going to be a big close, because when I come back down, or when I get all my stuff done, I'm going to fill out your name right here. Those are the only things that aren't done yet. It's blank, but I'm going to fill out your name, your address, and all that, and you know what the price is. When I'm done with my stuff, that's my homework assignment. Your homework assignment is to check me out. When I'm done with my stuff, I'm going to bring it back to you, and then you'll have an opportunity to sign or to hire me at that point, or not. I'm not going to force you to hire me, right? So, but I like to let them know that what I intend to do. Okay, so when we're sitting down, I just like to give them an overall review of everything I kind of told them on the phone, but more detail. I think one of the best ways to do that, to really to try to help them visualize this, on my YouTube channel, I started a thing a few years ago called "What's Wrong with This Insurance Estimate?" And has anybody here seen that? Has anybody seen it? Okay, check, get you a link or something. But there's like 10 episodes on there, and I go through, some are like 20 or 30 minutes, a couple other ones are like 2 hours long, And what I do is I show on the video a copy of a real State Farm estimate, right? Just for example, of a roof claim, couple interior rooms. And I show it on the video, and I walk through line item by line. What does this mean? What does this mean? This is what the insurance company is saying here, right? And I kind of show what's wrong with this insurance estimate. So from there, then I show, so that starts with the problem, and then I show what I think is the solution. So I show my estimate. This is the estimate written correctly, the way that I think is correct. And I show them the solution, right? So you start with the State Farm, show it's way too short. My estimate's much higher, but it's much more detailed, it's more professional. Got a lot more documentation, footnotes, right? And then I show them the revised final estimate that State Farm came up with in the end, like the result, okay? Like they didn't approve everything that I had on my estimate, but you can see the price went from here all the way up to here. And you can see by doing that process how it happened. Like it won't take a genius to figure out how it happened. Right? Like if I just took a little bit of time with you, if you've never heard about Xactimate, never heard about a claim at all, and I explained that to you briefly, just educated you about this is the software program they're using, right? We're all using the same prices. They're missing items from the estimate, which is why the price is low. You see? And the best way to get them to visualize that is by actually showing them an original estimate. And so on my videos, I redact out the personal information, like black out that stuff. So if I were you, I would make some type of a binder that you don't give to them, but it's just something that you show them, where it's the best way to really explain this, right? Because if you're trying to explain it to them in words, and they've never seen this stuff before or heard it, it's just Japanese. They're going to nod, like maybe a couple of you are doing just, yeah, Chad, yeah. Like, I'm hearing you, Chad, yeah. But it's the best way to refresh. Show them a real State Farm estimate, or whoever estimate. And then show them your version of that estimate, and show them where it ended up, or someone within the company's estimate. And put it in a binder to where you can quickly go through and say, let me show you how the process works. This is an estimate that they started with. They were, as you can see, they were missing this, missing that, right? This is our estimate, and everything has to be paid according to building codes, which we're going to get into after the break, right? But everything, and this is where I have proved that these codes are required in this area, right? And so you show them how it's written correctly. State Farm didn't agree with everything, but look how far, how much further we got. So if they go and interview a couple other contractors after that, come on, is anybody gonna go to that length? You kind of have to put on a little mini seminar for the client. I think the answer to almost anything in sales in this business is educating the client. Being transparent. Show them how it works rather than to try to keep it close to the vest. If you can reveal how it works, through that process, they're going to understand that you understand how it works. They're going to give their trust to you as the expert. So that's the other part of this, is establishing yourself as the expert. That's from the first time on the phone, first word you say, first time you show up at the door, you want to establish yourself as the expert. To me, that inspection, I call it an inspection, not an estimate, but that meeting for the inspection is a way for me to sell them without ever having to ask them for the paperwork or ask them for the order, any of that. When you show up, a lot of you guys, you've seen the adjusters when they show up these days. They're a little more high tech, aren't they? Like they're like more so than maybe before, but then they usually have like little laser measuring devices and the latest little tool belts and little like things to hook themselves to the ridge if they need to, you know. They're usually real clean. They're usually not dirty, but but they have like camera maybe hanging around their neck and little electronic devices and things. Maybe they have their laptop. I've seen this one guy get up, he put the laptop stand up in the living room and set it up and his printer, you know. It's a little more high tech. What I want to do when I show up to the meeting with the client or with an adjuster is I want to be thinking like that, but even much more so. Okay, so like when I show up, I have a camera that's similar to that. It's actually right here. Right, so when I show up, so usually the adjusters, they have those little flat Kodak little cameras, you know. I like to show up with, like, mine's bigger than yours is. Anytime I go, like, so when I go, you know, I've got my camera hanging around my neck. If it's a commercial job, I've got a hard hat and a safety vest on, you know, but I've got my big tool belt, and I get the big bulky tool belt with all the pockets. It's mostly for the image, for the presentation value of it, right? But when I'm going to inspect every room, closet, hallway, what I'm looking for are water spots primarily. So I'm mostly looking at the ceilings and around windows and things. But when I'm doing that, I can find those water spots with a little mini mag light flashlights, my favorite kind to use. So I have one of those. But I also have the big mag light, which I don't need. But again, it's just a big, you know, it's like I have a thermal imaging camera, tape measures, you know, laser devices, like everything, you know, and I'm walking in and I literally have to, like, you know, go through doorways so I'm not clanging things through the doors, you know, but so when I show up, you get the idea, right? Like I want to be looking the part more than anybody else would. Anybody ever showing up to that job, no way is another contractor going to go there looking like that. I have drones, I come with my big drone box up to the door, I got to sit stuff down to shake their hand, you know, which we're not shaking hands, I get it. So. but anyway, you get the idea, right? Like so, and with an adjuster, I'm showing up to the adjuster appointments like that, and we'll talk more about that later. But that either way, when I show up, that's what I want to show up looking like. So that's part of it. Is wow, you know, they're like, yeah, this guy's coming, like he means business, you know. So, and I do. But when I get there, again, I'm never asking for the paperwork. I'm sitting down with them, getting them off to there, sitting them down, give them a brief overview of what it is that I intend to do, the little roadmap, right? And then I like to get up from that table. So I like to make that process, as long as they're willing to sit there with you, it's probably because they're doing a lot of talking. Let them talk. Let it go on forever, man. My advice is love the one you're with. Instead of trying to figure out how to do 8 appointments per day, break it down to 2 per day. If it's long appointments like that with a person who's qualified, I mean, your sales ratio is going to be way higher. You're going to sell bigger jobs with better people, and you're going to waste way less time, you know. So anyway, the next step from there is getting up from there into the inspection. I would get up with the client and start to do the interior. Now, my purpose is to get the paperwork, but I'm never going to ask for it, okay? They're going to shove it into my hands and beg me to take it from them, okay? And how I do that is, you're getting the idea already that by asking them certain questions on the phone, by showing them the visualization stuff, like with the estimate, the before, the problem, the solution, the result, right? That I'm establishing myself as the expert, the way I showed up. They should start to get the idea that I'm a source of information for them, okay? So what I want to do is, I want to, in each room that we look at, or each area that we look at, I want to ask them questions about what State Farm said about that area, okay? For example, if we go into a room where there's a water spot that State Farm already has, what's the State Farm say about this? They don't really know. Think about it. They don't know what State Farm. They remember that room being on the estimate, but they don't remember which item State Farm said they had to use to draw up the dining room, for example. So I look at, well, I'd say, well, usually I ask them questions about what State Farm said, and then tell them what State Farm typically says, and then tell them what we do, okay? So what State Farm say about the ceiling fan here? And I watch them flounder a little bit, you know, and then I say, okay, well, State Farm typically, a lot of times, you know, what you should do is detach and reset that ceiling fan. A lot of times State Farm will pay to just mask and cover it, right? Which is, it's a better way to detach and reset. So you just start to point out things like that and ask them questions. And the first thing they do is, I don't know, let me go get that paperwork. And they go get the paperwork, and they bring it back, and they try to hand it to you so you can make some sense of it for them. And when they do that, they trust you. They trust you that you can make some sense of it. Like they trust what you think of that paperwork. They want you to interpret it for them. That's a great sign, right? So I go in, if they don't do that, then it's the next issue. Okay, mantle, fireplace, you know, you might be outside. You know, we were sitting down and I told you about the building codes, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, right? Like they have to pay everything according to building codes. Well, let me explain. Right here in this city, what is this city right here? I mean, what is what version of the
Hartford.
The IBC have they adopted?
Oh, this is 18.
Okay. Yeah. We'll get into that, but if I know, which I would know before I went there, that the city of such and such has adopted the 2018 versions of the code. Okay, we'll talk about that after lunch. We're getting the codes kind of hardcore, but without boring you, the code requires that anything that has flashing must be replaced when it's rusted, damaged, or deteriorated. Okay? That's any flashing. And to me, that means that all flashing has to be replaced, because it's all rusted, damaged, or deteriorated. How is it installed?
They always kick back on that, always.
The nail hole.
Sure.
Yeah, you got nail holes. So
They are going to kick back on it because they're not, this is something new to them even.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have to go and prove it to them and work through to the next level a lot of times. But it's installed with nails, so it has damage. Now, will it be damaged even more so during the tear off and more? Yeah, it will be, and that could help too.
Yep.
But that's what most people think. They're like, oh, it's going to be damaged during the tear off. That's their argument. But it's already damaged now. If I can show photos of the damage now, along with that code, which a lot of times you have to help educate the adjuster on the code. We'll talk more about that when we get to the code. Then they have to pay for that, right? So if I could spend some time educating them about how the building codes work, so that they can understand that if the building code says you can't do it and you do it, you're breaking the law. So if the insurance paperwork says to do it this way, and it's not taking codes into account, it's telling you to break the law. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, do you want to break the law? You know, they don't want to break the law. If they're halfway decent inclined, they don't want to be breaking the law. They want to do the right, responsible thing. And so when we're walking around, and I spend some time with the building codes as we're walking around, and I get to an area like that, and say, oh, like I was saying, you know, see your chimney right there? Blah, 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 blah. What did State Farm say about your chimney? I don't know, go get the paperwork. You know, and I'm just, if they don't go get the paperwork, the next room we go to, what State Farm, typically State Farm will say this and say that. And we do it this way. What State Farm say about that? if you get to like the 4th or 5th area and they haven't gone to get the paperwork, something's wrong with that client. I'm being serious. It's not like the problem's no longer, it's them. There's a red flag there. Something's wrong. Because they should, if they're getting everything correctly, they should want the insurance company to pay to put everything back the way it was before. And then just pay their deductible. I know that they're trying to get out of that too. But I'm just saying that they're not trying to put money in their pocket. So, but if they're still trying to hide everything from you, there's a reason for that. But if you do everything the way I'm saying, almost always they're going to come out and shove it in your hand. And when they come out and bring it out to me, and they try to give it to me, I'm like, oh no, hang on, I don't really need that right now. I'll get it from you eventually, but I don't really need that right now. Keep them in suspense. I don't even want to look to see what State Farm even had to say now. But State Farm a lot of times on a dining room that has water damage, it's just paint the seal, or it might say spot paint or patch the ceiling. But when you think about it, and this is what the client needs to understand, and I'm sure many of you have seen it written the correct way by other adjusters, where they didn't say spot seal, paint, or patch, right? They didn't say that. Because if you come into a room and it has one water spot on the ceiling, even the size of a quart, okay, that water spot has to be removed. If it's drywall, that wet drywall has to be removed. You don't just put kills on it and just try to patch it up. That's not going to work. That's going to bleed through later. So if it has so much water on the drywall to where the water came through to this side of the drywall, to where you can actually see it, think about what the other side looks like. Is there insulation above that? Did the insulation get wet? Where'd the water come from? And everything from there to there, right? And by the way, is that category 1 water damage, category 2 water damage, or category 3? Category 1 just being fresh, clean water. Category 2 being a little bit more yucky. Category 3 being full on, like sewage backup type water or really hazardous stuff. I would submit to you, it might even be category 3, because start on the roof and permeated down through, and what did it sit in first, like bird waste and algae and on through rusted nails and all kinds of.
Well, once it turns mold, it's category 3, right?
Right, which we never say the word mold.
No.
Right, we never say, good point. There's lots of mold. There's mold everywhere. Everybody has mold in their house to some level, right? Some harmful, some not, more harmful than not. But we never say mold because usually in the policy, mold will fall into a category that has a cap, that has a ceiling on it, right? But when we think about real bad mold, I'll give you an example in a second, but if you think about real bad mold, it could be like little black spots, or it could be actual growth, like spores that you can see on it, right? Either way, the prescription of dealing with it is honestly the same for real extensive water damage, if you think about it. There's a little bit more to it, like there's more HEPA cleaning involved maybe, there's maybe more containment, maybe full face respirators, not maybe, you should be doing that. But a lot of times with just extensive water damage, you're using the same protocol to deal with the problem. Okay, using the same type of equipment, using the same PPE equipment to deal with that problem. Okay, my point is, what caused the mold?
Water.
Correct, water. So it's water damage. It's not mold damage, it's water damage. I remember in Galveston, Texas, Hurricane Ike, I'm standing in this house where it had previously been filled up to the ceiling with seawater by the storm surge. And I'm with this adjuster, we have masks on, we're standing there looking at like what looks like shrubbery along the baseboard. We're looking at it's all mold everywhere. It's crazy, worst I've ever seen. And I looked at that adjuster and I said, would you look at the extent of that water damage? And he kind of laughed. He's like, yeah, that's pretty serious water. Do you want to get paid on it? But so it's water damage, with just to that point there. But if the client, back to what I was saying with the client, if they don't give you the paperwork, something's wrong with them, right? But usually they're going to give you the paperwork. I don't need the paperwork. I don't need it, okay? But it sure does help to know where State Farm's at in the process, okay? But I certainly don't need it, you know, and through asking them those questions, I can usually come close to determine where they're at. But I want them, okay, back to the water spot, that's where I was, bouncy ball. Water spot, coming through the ceiling, it could be category 3 on the ceiling. If it is just a water spot, I'm not gonna write it up that way in my estimate. Because, by the way, in Xactimate, there's a category of drywall. Just remove drywall, R&R drywall that you guys see a lot of, you know, R&R this, R&R that, R&R cabinets, R&R countertop, R&R carpet. But there's a water mitigation category, WTR, where it's tear out wet carpet and bag for disposal. What do you think is gonna be more expensive? Tear out drywall or tear out wet drywall, bag for disposal? Tear out wet drywall, category 3, bag for disposal. Tear out wet baseboard. If you go from that category, it's a lot more expensive, and that should be the way that it's done, okay? So we do have an extensive job. That's the category I'm gonna be using for all the removal items, okay? But my point is, if it's just a simple water spot, I maybe could and should be writing it up that way, but I'm not. I'm gonna keep it reasonable for the adjuster. I'm not gonna write it up, tear out wet drywall, bag for disposal. However, the floor, mask and cover the floor, right? We need that, don't we? Contents, move out, then reset. We need that, don't we? If it's a water spot on the ceiling, if it's a drywall ceiling, then we're going to detach and reset all of the light fixtures, ceiling fan, HVAC registers, smoke detectors, anything else that's up there, okay? And we're going to tear out the drywall, even if it's just a little section of drywall, a little piece, 1 by 1 or whatever it is. We're going to remove the drywall, we're going to remove the wet insulation above, we're going to spray it with antimicrobial agent, replace the insulation, replace the drywall, replace the texture, right? We have to prime and paint the whole ceiling, not just that area, but the entire ceiling. In order to do that, we have to tape and mask and tape along where the walls meet the ceiling, don't we? Don't we have to do all this stuff? This is not just gonna, I mean, so in other words, if it's not on the estimate, the painter, the painting crew job, these are all items that they are going to do. Well, would you agree with me? They have to do it in order to get to that job. So on my estimate, it's going to include every last one of those things. If that spot is touching the wall or even close to the wall, when I'm tearing out the drywall, it's going to tear the paint on the wall. So now I have to deal with the wall. I've got to paint the wall. Not just one wall, all the walls wherever they lead in a continuous run, right? And I've dealt with several jobs where you come in and there's a spot down the wall. Remember this one job in particular, there's a spot down this 22-foot high ceiling in the entry foyer where there was a water spot running down the wall, and they had to pay to deal with that. But it just led everywhere. The wall, there was no place where it stopped. It went up the stairs and on up that area. It was like a bar area, and downstairs, on throughout the dining room. There's no place that it really stopped. You know, usually if it's stopped by a header, you know, something like this, you're not going to go into the next room, right? But I want to spend a little bit of time educating the client that that's how it's supposed to be done. What State Farm say? You see, so it's a much different story. Now, also, I want the, you know, if I'm you guys, I'm doing the inspection, I'm inspecting every room, closet, hallway. I want the overhead and profit too. Usually, when you have interior work, if it's more than just one little room, then usually that is going to be almost the trigger that's automatically going to get you overhead and profit. Maybe not on their first estimate, like the one that they write, but for you requesting the overhead and profit, lots less resistance when you're asking for that, when you have interior damage, because you have multiple things to do on the inside. Not according to the adjuster, paint one coat, right, or spot paint. It's not very extensive or complex or requires coordination then, right? But it does if done correctly. So by your protocol being correct makes the job more complex, requiring more coordination, getting you more overhead and profit approved. Does that make sense? But the inspection, can you see where this is going with the client though? You're going with them, you're going from room to room to room, you're looking at everything with your little light, they're seeing you do that, and I like to do that too because I find water spots so often that no one else ever saw. And that right there gives me instant credibility. When they see why I wanted to come in and inspect, you know, and I found it. Oh yeah, my goodness, yeah, there is a water spot there. Yeah, there sure is. Look at that right there, you know. So just going through with the flashlight a lot of time will go a long way, right? But then, finding the damage and then explaining how State Farm will typically deal with it and how you deal with it, what State Farm say. Then when you complete all that, you want to just that, I don't like to take my photos or any measurements during that part of the walkthrough, because I'm all focused on the client, that communication with the client, asking them questions, educating them on to the next section or area or room. But then when I go onto the roof or fly my drone or go into the attic, I kind of want to find a place to cut them loose for me to go do my own thing. And we did our initial walkthrough. If we found damage, I have to go back and do my photos and measurements and all that stuff anyway. But then I remind them, remember, I've got my homework assignment to do, and you've got your homework assignment. I'm going to go do my photos and do all of that, and then I'm going to go out to my office in my truck, prepare the paperwork, and I'll be back in with everything complete and ready to go at that time. Again, you'll have the opportunity to hire me at that time. You don't have to, but I'm at least going to give it to you, okay, while I'm here. So your homework assignment is to go check us out. Because I don't like to go in there and go through all that and make my presentation, and they're like, okay, great, well, we're going to do a little research and check out your references and check out your BBB, da-da-da. What? You didn't do that already? I want to try to see if I can get them to do their little homework assignment and have that done. Just get them to commit to doing that before we meet back for that, presentation, if you will. And that's what that is. I go out to my truck, put it all together. I use Google Drive for storing all my photos, and I don't know what you guys use, but I just have to make sure all that's uploaded, have a link for them, because I told them I'd give them the footage, and I come back in with everything I need to close them, all the paperwork. And I don't know how you guys do shingle colors and things. Like, I know they have to pick out their shingles, but I've gotten by for years and years and years with putting TBD, client choice, on the contract, because I don't want that to hold up the close either. And I find that if you're more into the insurance stuff, focused on how you can help them with that, then the things that they should be asking me, like, tell me about your materials, tell me about your crews, tell me about how the job's going to go when they show up. It's like they forget all that stuff. They should be asking me those things. I think it's important, but they forget all that. And they even forget about, like, a couple days later, they call like, hey, don't I have to pick out a color of a shingle or something? Where it never even came up because we were so focused on the insurance stuff, how we've got to get that process correct. They saw how I discovered all this information. They could already see where it's going. They've seen already an example of an Xactimate estimate, from before, my estimate, and where that went. They're real excited about getting that process going, about me, getting those missing items into an Xactimate estimate for them. It's going really well when they're like, oh, here, you haven't looked in here yet. Come in here. Look in here for damage. When you're finding spots, you haven't looked in the garage. Oh, did you look out here?